Today's outreach discussion will focus on things we're doing to build our NA communities. We will also be discussing ways to move forward. And so with that, I would like to turn the floor over to Sam.
Hello, family. Can everybody see me? Awesome. My name is Sam G. I'm in Orlando, Florida. My clean date is 6/24/08. I'm very honored to be a part of this discussion today. And what we're going to do is just ask some questions to some people and talk about the way they've been building community long before we even started doing what we're doing here today. First up is Scott M. in Kansas City. Hey, Scott, can you hear me?
Yes. Hey, Sam.
How are you?
Good.
So tell us just very briefly, what clean time you've got, how you identify and, what your experiences in NA have been, especially in the rural community and where you lived for about 5 years.
Sure. My clean date is 1/1/2003. I got clean in Kansas City, Missouri. I stayed clean in Kansas City, Missouri until I lived in Kansas City, Missouri and found a good deal of support as I'm a gay man, and I found a good deal of support in Kansas City. At about 11 years clean, I moved to Trenton, Missouri, which was a very small town about 2 hours away from here, and for a job. And I encountered a lot of homophobia there. So that was unusual for me. I wasn't prepared for it. I was out loud and proud, and I encountered some problems with that. My boss told me that I needed to tone down the gay stuff. Also, there was not NA there as I was accustomed to it. There was an NA meeting, but it was not really an NA meeting. It was like an AA meeting that was disguised as calling itself an NA meeting. So I had some work to do, I guess.
So what was that like? You had found, like, when you first got to NA, were you loved and accepted for who you are?
Yeah, fortunately in Kansas City, we had quite a few predecessors who were out, and my first meeting, I went to a speaker meeting, an open meeting, because I was told I needed to go to an open meeting and sign up for the NA classes. That's where my little rehab that I went to sent me. So I got there, and fortunately the speaker was a lesbian. So she shared about her experiences and had her wife there to support her and stuff. So I knew from that meeting that I belonged there. So I didn't have any problem with expressing my sexuality, and I felt very accepted in the NA community.
So like from this jump, visibility within an NA meeting anywhere was important. It was the thing that actually helped you identify quickly.
Right. So
when you went to the rural area, what was that like?
It was very different. And, I wanted to share and did share my sexual identity, and I got some pushback on sharing that by members of the group. And I was just, I said I'm open about this, and if you have a problem with it, it's too bad, because I earned my place here. And fortunately, there were not a lot of members that had much clean time. So they let me kind of take control, and I had a lot of other issues with the group. So I tried to tell them what they did wrong, and that wasn't a good thing. So it backfired on me, but through group conscience, I helped them to learn. And eventually I guess, eventually, as I shared my sexual identity and stuff, I was able, people started coming to our meeting who were members of the LGBT plus community. So ultimately, I ended up sponsoring a transgender person and a bisexual woman and a couple of gay men. So they kind of came to me.
So it sounds like you also had a lot of, for those that were open and willing, a lot of one-on-one conversations before or after a meeting. Hey, this is who I am, this is why, blah, blah, blah. And that's how you started to move the needle, even in a rural area, is those private one-on-ones.
Yes, my first sponsees in that community were the guy who was from rural Tennessee. He'd been a carnival worker, a carny, and he basically said, well, I don't want you hitting on me. And I said, that's not the way, I don't do that with sponsees. And he was like, well, why do you sleep with men anyway? I said, I don't know. It's just the way God made me. And he became a very understanding and caring person who I got a lot out of my relationship with him. He died due to complications of hepatitis C with 5 years clean. But, you know, that was one of a deep relationship that I had with him.
And would you say, like, as a person of an LGBT experience, you learned something from someone?
Yeah, I learned a lot of compassion for him and understanding that he had the same issues that I had. It was just different. Different as relationships go, but the same. So he had the same feelings and issues with women that I had with men.
And like, you said something like you started a meeting, right? And then people from miles around, hours around came, right? Kind of like a lighthouse, if you will.
Yeah, it was kind of weird, but I guess the word was out that hey, there's a guy that's gay that comes to this meeting, and if you're interested or whatever, then this is the place to come.
Hey, you guys got about 2 minutes left.
Thanks, Shane.
So what I would also add this, because, you know, going into this, we don't know what we don't know. And I would certainly say, as a reflection back to you, you had great, strong recovery. You were unwavered in your dedication to the principles and traditions, and that attraction, both knowing and having good, strong recovery, but in addition to also being somebody from the gay community, was one of the things that helped bring people around. What would you want to tell somebody, because you were doing this stuff years ago, what would you want to tell somebody right now that might be coming into the rooms about your experiences, or how to, you know, build community in, you know, their own area, wherever that area might be in the world?
Just don't compromise your principles. I know it's tough. It's hard to face that. And you get a lot of pushback. I had several experiences. We had a treatment center in town, and there was Amish community next door. A lot of people got sent to that treatment center a lot of young Amish men got sent to that treatment center when they messed up and got hooked on drugs. So we had them come to our meetings, and I got called a lot of names that weren't necessarily pleasant. And when I shared, and I just had to say, stop, you don't get to call me that, or we don't tolerate that kind of language in our meeting. And fortunately, the group members pretty much backed me up and said, you know, no. And we treat everybody with love and compassion here. You have to stand up for yourself, is what I've learned. And, you know, once you get the word out there that this is what you are, and you're not afraid of it, and you're okay with that, then they can't say anything that's going to hurt you, is how I feature, how I stand. And I've done it for a lot of years.
You have, and thank you for that. And I think, Shane, are we almost out of time?
Time for Lark. Yep.
All right, next up is Lark L from Chicago. Thank you again, Scott, for all your time, and we had a great conversation earlier. So welcome, Lark. So tell me a little bit about like what your clean time is, how you identify, and what's going on in your world right now.
Hi, my name is Lark. I'm an addict. My pronouns are she, her. I live in Chicago. I'm originally from Augusta, Georgia, and my clean date is May 20th, 2016. Let's see, I was the addict that thought geographical changes would kind of help me in my situation because I never felt like I fit in anywhere. So I thought moving from place to place would help in that endeavor. I moved to Chicago in March of 2016 to get away from the things that I
Lark, we lost your audio.
Here we go. Oh, wait.
Lark, we can't hear you.
in a couple.
There we go.
Oh, okay. Is that?
There.
Sorry, you cut out there for about 30 seconds.
Oh
Yeah.
no. All right. What was the last thing you heard?
I don't know. I panicked.
Yeah. Okay.
You moved.
All right,
You were talking about making geographical changes.
Yeah, I was making geographical changes. I moved to Chicago in March of 2016, just to kind of get away, not necessarily to get clean, but just to get away from the life that I was living. And, you know, started going to meetings about a month after I got here, and then ended up getting clean about a month after that. So as far as the subject, you know, the topics here, I identify as pansexual. And for me, that means that I'm attracted to human beings. So that's my identity as far as that goes. So, yeah.
You guys just started on a really big, cool endeavor there in Chicago. You kind of figured out there were some needs in your community, right? How did you identify that there was a need, and how did you all start going through as a community to address that need?
Well, there was a need. The first need that we identified was that there was a need for a women's meeting. We had 2 women's meetings that had recently closed in our particular area. There's one in a different area in our region that's kind of thriving, but that's like, you know, it's really far away from where we are. So there was a need. My sponsor actually challenged me and another person to start a women's meeting. And so we took that for, you know, the challenge was to start one in 2020. So we took that, we put feelers out there. We had planning meetings at the beginning. You know, we met 2 or 3 times, and each time it was like 10 to 12 people. So, okay, clearly there's a need for this kind of common interest group. And during those conversations, you know, I sponsor a couple of people who identify as non-binary, a trans woman and a trans man right now. And, you know, they also wanted a place to be included. So it was really important to them to be able to have that identification and feel safe, even if it was, you know, labeled as a women's meeting. So we we were able to get, a unanimous group conscience during these planning meetings that trans and non-binary were it was a trans and non-binary inclusive meeting. And how do we communicate that to the general public? And we were doing that in the way that it was listed in the directory and on the website, where, it's the meeting, I'm not going to say the meeting name, but within that, it was open to trans and non-binary folks, and we used FOLX to kind of signify that, to say, hey, this is a safe place for you. This is a place that you can belong.
And you had said that there were a lot of, what you had noticed was part of that need, there were a lot of women coming into the fellowship, and it was something new and different, and that you kind of saw that, and they needed a spot to come in and be safe and just be able to share about whatever, right?
Yeah. When I came in 4 years ago, there were women, but there weren't large groups of them in any meetings. There were a lot of times where I was one of only one or two women, maybe three if I was lucky. And over the last year, particularly, we're noticing a lot of younger women coming into our area who don't feel safe discussing certain issues in mixed meetings, who think that they're the only ones going through these experiences when the greater whole, we have these common experiences, but a lot of, especially newcomers coming in that are young don't feel safe talking about those issues in general meetings.
So you've done, it sounds like, everything like we're according to traditions and everything else that we've talked about, and you're building a meeting, and then what happened? Then
what happens is the meeting starts meeting in person. It's out there. I have one of my non-binary sponsees presents very male, and they were invited to the meeting by multiple people thinking that it was a safe space. And after meeting in person 2 or 3 times, it became an issue for a different set of people in that meeting. So it caused a sort of divide. So where on paper it looked really good, but in practice there was sort of a disconnect. And then I felt I was put in an awkward situation where I had to address this person, and it was presented to me in a way where we were trying to protect the newcomer. That newcomer who's afraid of going into a meeting is like, oh, they're going to come in and see this person and not know that they are non-binary and not know that they are safe. So under that umbrella, I'm like, okay, I'm thinking about the newcomer. And fortunately, this person has some clean time under their belt, has some recovery, not just clean time, but recovery, and was in a place that they could learn and grow from it. Someone without clean time and recovery, that might have sent them back out, and so in practice, on paper it was really good. In practice, it was something else. And one of the things I learned from that is definitely, as Scott was saying earlier, like principles before personalities. I got to stand up for my principles. It was in that moment that I was speaking in support of an opinion or trying to understand another side that I didn't necessarily believe in, and speaking to that, which did not end well at all. And then, how important communication is. Sometimes asking the hard questions, because in hindsight, I felt like someone was asking me questions without asking the real question. Yeah.
And I think like what one of the things that you're grappling with, and I would say learning and growing through, is an issue within the broader LGBTQ community, and that is, I identify as this thing, present as this thing, and then people within our own community are still grappling with those ideas of what that means to be a member of that community. And I think, at least like when we spoke, what you did was you used traditions and spiritual principles to kind of like navigate through all of that. And I think that's a lot of times like when people grow the most is when things go astray, and then we do a deep dive on what I'm really supposed to learn. Have you personally, I think there's maybe 30 seconds left or whatever, but Have you personally ever experienced anything negative in Narcotics Anonymous?
I have not. No,
Oh,
I have not. But I'm in a heterosexual relationship. I present as very feminine. I can pass as straight, all of those things. So I personally have not, I found my identification in my home in the rooms of Narcotics Anonymous, and in working steps, and now starting to work traditions. I'm finding my voice, and I feel safer, saying things out loud like I'm pansexual, and stuff like that. So.
so one thing that you, like when we spoke, you read from the, I would love for you to read again because I thought it was so beautiful and literally the point of this entire conversation. Do you remember that passage?
Yeah, I do. It's in the It Works How and Why on page 129. And it says, it's also important to remember the unseen members in our discussions, the members yet to come. When we work to ensure the vitality of NA, we're not working just for ourselves, but for those yet to join us.
I think that's beautiful.
Yeah.
Beautiful way to end it. So thank you so much for talking with me and being a part of this. I really, really, really appreciate it. And next up, we've got Alex. Alex, let me
Hi, Sam.
Hi.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm great. Thanks. Thanks for having me.
So, just briefly, tell us about your clean time and how you identify, and a little bit about how you started a movement in Paris almost.
Sure. Hi, everybody. I'm Alex. I'm an addict. I currently live in Paris, France, and I'm 16 months clean now. My clean date is 25th of January 2019, and I'm really honored to be here. I actually started like 16 months ago. I arrived in NA, and in my first meeting was a regular meeting, and then eventually I ended up in an LGBTQ meeting where a whole sense of belonging was just amazing. Eventually, I couldn't get clean easily, so I had to go to treatment center. And when I get out, I started to be quite active in the LGBTQ meetings, and I took service position there. And since then, never left. There was historically one LGBTQ meeting in Paris, which opened around 2009 after the World Convention in Barcelona. This meeting has been going on for about 10 years, and it was started by basically my sponsor and two other gays and 3 lesbian, and that was it. Today we are like super active. We have so many young newcomers, and so we were able to open a second meeting quite recently. We opened it, I think, if I recall correctly, like last October. So it's very, very recent, and we're super proud. And now in lockdown, there has been a third online Zoom meeting that is supposed to stay an online meeting, and so this is where we're at the moment in Paris and in France.
So, and I think that you kind of did, it's interesting, like when you actually talk to everyone, you start to see a lot of commonalities. Like, did you personally have any negative experiences coming into Narcotics Anonymous?
Well, I personally did not have, but when I first arrived, one of the project that was in place at the LGBT meetings was a workshop on discrimination happening in NA against gay, trans, etc. And I was asked to be part of that project, and so I did. So I went on and collect some evidence and information around and ask people what their experience was, and it so happens that there were LGBTQ members that were feeling not safe anymore in NA because of what they've been told and discrimination they felt, and so we addressed this issue. Our predecessors actually asked the region to put that as a top priority for 2019, and that's basically what happened. And we were in charge of spreading the voice around and basically educate people. And that was my first my first service experience as a new gay comer last year, and that was pretty amazing. The response were amazing, and obviously our first natural allies on this task were women, and we had a lot of support from women at this stage. And I understand also that they were the first person to come to this LGBT meeting 10 years ago when it all started, because there were 3 gays, 3 lesbians, and mainly a lot of women who actually could feel safe to go into these meetings, and also identifying with issues like HIV or just feeling safe to talk about sex, and that's how it all develops 10 years ago and to basically now.
So if I may interject and underline, boldly here, because like we all have our own experiences. We don't really know how remarkable they are. And I was telling Alex, like, in other words, your entire area identified there is an issue with discrimination in our meetings among the LGBT population, and collectively elevated it, not just at a group level, not just on a personal level, but to the area level, where you're actually having systemic change and everybody's actually talking about this, to the point where you guys actually got your area to discuss this and vote, right? Like, to me, that's like mind-blowing. Tell me a little bit about, like, because you also obviously had to have lots of little personal conversations, right, to achieve something. Yep. Right?
Yeah. Basically, that was that's when I arrived in this project. I went on and interviewing people. I mean, we don't have many transgender recovering addicts in France. We have a couple, 3 maybe. And the 3 of them felt discriminated at some point. I mean, and that was an issue to be addressed. And so we did at the regional level. I wasn't there during when this priority was voted, but I was there after to execute, if I made the project, and went on meeting, and we basically organized a Paris convention, and there we had the chance that we were allocated a time slot at a workshop to actually continue to educate and educate people about these issues.
And you kind of did the same thing, but just kind of parallel to other people that were doing it around the world, because you started another LGBT meeting, right? You identified that your meeting originally was on Monday, but then there were issues, and individuals within the LGBTQ community were relapsing a lot. And how did you address that?
So yeah, thank you, Sam. Basically, again, I still feel like a newcomer, and those ideas were originated way before I arrived, and we just took a dynamic in motion, and that was an idea that was in the mind of our predecessors for a few years, and I could see myself. I mean, I could see so many newcomers relapsing on and on and on, and that idea that we needed to have at least some sort of meeting at somewhere during the weekend. Eventually, Friday was felt that it was a great option for people to either choose to go and recover on a meeting on Friday, or go and in the hell of the weekend that we all know. And so with a bunch of, at the time we were about 10 young newcomers, we decided to open this meeting to offer an option for gay who wanted to recover, to have the option not to go to use and to go to a meeting instead just before the weekend. Another issue that we had was whether we could make a special purpose meeting just for gay men. And we did not decided to do it for the second meeting because we were pretty unsure on how would that work, and if that would be against tradition, or you know, and we had also this concern for NA unity, as Luis described it earlier, while at the same time knowing that there was this really urgent need for us to you know, to talk about those issues. And this is a project that is ongoing right now. This is during lockdown, we've been with other trusted servants going around, you know, the globe, and just taking advantage that every meeting was on Zoom to go and ask people around how they did that. We found an Australian men meeting, and they were very helpful to give us some advice on how to open just a, you know, a man gay meeting. Another issue we had was that basically the historical meeting on Monday was so popular that many newcomers didn't feel safe anymore to share their, you know, their issues, and so it was a bit crowded. So that's why we tried on the second meeting to, you know, just keep the LGBTQ colors in place and try not to have this second meeting, you know, just being a regular meeting. And so for that, we, you know, we met, and the group conscious decided, you know, on different little aspects. For example, the chair would give the first 5 share to LGBTQ people in priority, that will have anniversary messages from LGBTQ people, you know, and so, you know, we try to find ways to keep that identity, to keep a strong LGBTQ plus identity in this second meeting. You know, it was the Monday meeting is you know, is also went through some sort of crisis, and we just learned from that.
If you got 30 seconds left, if you
Sure.
were to tell anyone around the world one thing that was super important to you, literally constructing and building, you know, LGBT community within the arc of NA, what would you want them to know?
Service. I mean, that's what made me, you know, that's why I'm here today. That's how I stay clean. That's how I feel helpful. I mean, I feel so helpful for my community by just, you know, being able to just be present at a meeting, having service position, being able to share, you know, my passion for recovery, and you know, and it basically, I think it all goes down to the 5th tradition of, you know, just carrying the message to any addict who suffers. And you know, in the LGBTQ community, we have so many addicts suffering, and you know, it does feel, you know, it does make feel. I feel to have a purpose by doing so, and I stay clean. So.
All right, thank you. I want to thank all of our speakers or panel presenters again. It was amazing. Like, some of the things that I learned, you know, there are a lot of commonalities with myself and others. You know, they always went to a meeting, whether it was in an LGBT meeting or not. They just went out there. Visibility was super important. I believe that as well. And man, you know, you get that idea, dream it, follow the traditions, and all of a sudden the community that you're looking to grow grows. Like, in other words, it can be done. So I want to thank all you guys for being here. And I think through the website, you can reach out and probably talk to any one of the people that you heard today. So with that, I will turn it back over to Shane.